They're doing it again. They do it every time Donald Trump does not fall on his face as president of the United States. And so today, because Donald Trump stood beside the NATO Secretary General and said perfectly reasonable things about NATO that were, of course, badly phrased, the media is once again saying that Donald Trump is finally being presidential about foreign policy. And they said that on the very same day that the most unpresidential elected official in American history said this.
I want to give everybody a good, fair chance. Director Comey was very, very good to Hillary Clinton, that I can tell you. If he weren't, she would be right now going to trial.
The madman is still loose in the White House, accusing President Obama of crimes, accusing Susan Rice of crimes, still accusing Hillary Clinton of crimes. Crimes in Hillary Clinton's case that the director of the FBI said could not be proved. Director James Comey studied Hillary Clinton's State Department email arrangement and could not find a crime that he believed she could be successfully prosecuted for. He could not find any precedent for a prosecution. That's what the FBI director said publicly. The FBI director is appointed to a 10-year term, but the president can fire him. And there's the president of the United States today saying that FBI Director James Comey deliberately let Hillary Clinton get away with federal crimes. And the president who says that is not firing that obviously criminal FBI director. That is madness from start to finish. But there's more. In that same interview, Donald Trump said this about James Comey, quote, "I have confidence in him," end quote. Of course, the president of the United States saying the FBI director let a Secretary of State get away with crimes would be the most massive story of most previous years of the American presidency. But today, it's ignored because the miracle happened. Donald Trump stood at a podium and didn't fall on his face. He said nothing outright stupid about NATO, which means he did not say one word about NATO that he said every day on the campaign trail about NATO. In his press conference with the NATO Secretary General, the president was asked the key question about last week's chemical attack in Syria. Did Vladimir Putin know about the attack before it occurred? And of course, Donald Trump gave Vladimir Putin the benefit of the doubt.
Mr. President, do you think it's conceivable, what's your instinct, was it possible that Syrian forces could have launched that attack in Idlib last week without the Russians knowing? And have you been disappointed, surprised by Vladimir Putin's reaction since then? Thank you very much.
I think it's certainly possible. I think it's probably unlikely. And I know they're doing investigations into that right now. I would like to think that they didn't know, but certainly they could have. They were there. So we'll find out. General Mattis is looking into it with the entire Pentagon group that does that kind of work.
If you just take out the words probably unlikely from that answer, Donald Trump gave a good answer. I think it's certainly possible, and I know they're doing investigations into that right now. You could even say, I hope they didn't know about it. But if you take out the I think it's probably unlikely, you end up with a perfectly normal answer. I think it's probably unlikely makes it the most pro-Putin answer that a president could give in response to that question today. Those press conferences don't allow follow-ups like, why do you think it's probably unlikely? Because to think it's probably unlikely, someone has to give you some information about that. Donald Trump insists he does not know Vladimir Putin, so it can't be based on knowing that Putin's not a bad guy, or knowing that Putin is a bad guy when it comes to everything except chemical weapons. Donald Trump doesn't know that. Donald Trump said today that he changed his position to suddenly be in favor of launching a harmless missile strike that was guaranteed to do no damage in Syria in response to a chemical attack because he saw the victims of the chemical attack on TV. Now, that must mean he never saw the victims of any of the previous chemical attacks in Syria on TV when he was urging President Obama to not fire any missiles at Syria for anything that the Assad regime did, including using chemical weapons. Here's the President of the United States outlining the Trump doctrine of, if you see it on TV, you got to do something.
Everybody in this room saw it all too many times over the last 3 or 4 days. Young children dying, babies dying, fathers holding children in their arms that were dead children. There can't be a worse sight, and it shouldn't be allowed. That's a butcher. That's a butcher. So I felt we had to do something about it. I have absolutely no doubt we did the right thing. And it was very, very successfully done, as you well know.
Very successfully done. The missile attack did no damage. The Russians, and therefore Syria, were warned at least 90 minutes ahead of time where the missiles would be coming, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do once you have decided to fire those harmless missiles in this situation. The warning was a very reasonable part of that mission. But the warning was given by the president, who said he was never going to warn anybody what he was going to do militarily. He still hasn't told us what his secret military plan is to defeat ISIS, because he never tips his hand, never, unless he's going to fire missiles in the direction of any Russians who might be stationed at a Syrian airbase. Then he tips his hand only to them. The president's most vivid memory now of that night when he ordered his first missile strike is of a piece of chocolate cake.
I was sitting at the table. We had finished dinner. We're now having dessert. And we had the most beautiful piece of chocolate cake that you've ever seen.
I just need to stop right here at this point to point out that a pathological liar lies when he's breathing. There is simply nothing too small to lie about. And there is a language of pathological lying that always goes much further than it needs to go to make a point. We believe that the chocolate cake at the Trump Hotel that Donald Trump was making a profit on that night by having the United States government pay for it is very likely a nice piece of chocolate cake. For a pathological liar, that's not good enough. It has to be the most beautiful piece of chocolate cake, but for a Trumpian pathological liar, that's not good enough either. It's not good enough that it's the most beautiful piece of chocolate cake that Donald Trump has ever seen, which is the most superlative way he could possibly have described that cake. The pathological liar isn't satisfied with that. The pathological liar can't be satisfied. And so the pathological liar has to control your mind. The pathological liar has to tell you what you think. And so the pathological liar will sit there and tell you that this piece of chocolate cake that you've never seen is the most beautiful piece of chocolate cake that you've ever seen. Meaning that if you got a chance to see it, if you were lucky enough to see that Trump chocolate cake, you would agree. I know you think this is nitpicking. This is a man whose brain cannot process the proper reaction to anything. He cannot look at a piece of chocolate cake and put it in its proper place in the firmament of chocolate cake, wherever that is. He cannot look at dying babies and react as a president must. A president must be able to turn away from the dying babies and make a presidential decision about what to do about the dying babies. And every single president of the United States has had babies being murdered by horrible regimes around the world. And the president, unlike the rest of us, has to decide what to do about that, because the president is uniquely empowered to take actions that the rest of us cannot. There are babies starving to death right now as we speak in the world tonight, but Donald Trump hasn't seen pictures of them. And so it hasn't occurred to Donald Trump to offer any of the starving babies in the world even a crumb off of his plate of the most beautiful chocolate cake they've ever seen. They've never seen chocolate cake. They never will. And Donald Trump will never see them.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.